In this video, I'm going to cover debugging using Super Development Mode with Bookmarklets. I will be using or doing debugging with GWT Development Mode on a custom server, aka Super Development Mode. I'll start off by running a custom local web server. Then I'll start a code server for debugging, and then I will start Super Development Mode with the Bookmarklets. So to get started, I'm going to go to my Eclipse IDE. I have a simple GXT project, which is a GWT project, so both are the same in this context. The first thing I need to do, since it's a Maven project, I'm going to install it, and what that will do is send all the resources to the target folder, and this will be the web folder or the web hosting folder here. So what I'm going to do is right click on the project and debug as install, or I could go run as install, but I usually go to debug. So I'm going to go debug maven install, and this will copy all the resources and build initially, because I'm going to be debugging on the client side, so whenever I change the server-side resources in this context, I will have to reinstall, which means copy the sources and the classes to this folder here. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Okay, so the compilation is complete. Let me just refresh the target to verify that everything is up to date, synchronized. It looked like it did refresh before I did that. Okay, so I'm looking in the web directory folder, where the web server, or where I will run the web server from. In this context, I'm just using the target folder. To keep things simple in this tutorial, I'm just going to use this context. Sometimes the custom server may be a Tomcat server, so the resources may be copied to another location. It's not important where the resources are at, because this is a decoupled process using the bookmarklets to debug on a custom web server. So I'm going to run a simple web server using Python on this directory here, and I already have it set. So this is my directory that I was just pointing at in Eclipse. So I'm going to run this command here, and it'll run a simple web server for that directory on 8080. Oh, it looks like I have a mistake, so let me just go back to that directory because it was deleted and replaced. So I'm going to run the web server again. Okay, so this time it took off, and so what I want to do is go to this location and verify the web server is running. So I'm going to go to 192, or let's go to 0.08080. Okay, so it is running. So the next thing I want to do is start the code server. So I'm going to start the code server, which will start Super Development Mode. And the first thing I need to do is actually create a shortcut for that. So I'm going to right click on the project, go debug as. I only have to do this for the first time. The second time I can come up here and go to the debug shortcut. So let me go like this. That'll create the launcher to start with. And so what I want, GWT Development Mode, aka not with Jetty, because I am running a web server, so I need to run GWT Development Mode. And this will start a code server, or use the code server entry point. So I'm going to go up and show you what that is. Go debug as. It looks like I already have something running in the instance. Here's the shortcut for the launcher that was just created. I'm going to go to GWT arguments. You can see it's just a simple arguments. Here's my entry point, and the code server will be running on port 9876 of localhost. So I'm going to go close. Let's go over to the debug and shut down the previous service, which I was just using for testing before this demonstration. So I'm going to restart it. This is a good example to restart it right up here. I restart the instance. I'll make the debug console window a little bit bigger perspective. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to double click on that. I now have opened up the GWT code server, and what I want to do is copy the dev mode. So I'm going to erase my previous bookmarklets and remove them, just to make sure I don't have the wrong IP addresses in them and the wrong configuration, because they do come from this configuration. So I'm going to go and paste dev mode on and dev mode off. So I dragged and dropped it onto there. The next thing I want to do is go to my web server directory, and I want to press on dev mode. We can see that I'm not in my module, so I need to open up the web page, the home page. So this just is running the basic resources that I installed. So now I'm going to hit dev mode on, and it's going to ask me, I know this right here has detected that it is a module from, or GWT module, so now I can compile. So I'm going to click on compile, so I know SuperDev mode is now starting. And it compiled the project. As you can see in the background, it shows the output here. And if I go back to the web server or debugging, I can see that it has the 3 pounds. Well, let me remove those because I don't want them. Let's just see what happens here. So I'm going to remove them. Click Save, go back to my project. Now it should do an incremental compile, but I'm going to reload it. It doesn't do that. If you do with if you add the launcher directory and point it to these, and it'll add the bits into the notecast.js and a reload automatically. But in this case, we're using bookmarklets to trigger the event to compile. So I'm going to go dev mode on and hit compile. As you can see, it didn't compile, so I'm going to drag compile up here and try it this way. I can try this. It didn't compile, it didn't remove them. So you can see that I removed them. Okay, so I'm going to go dev mode off, and then I'm going to click on compile. So that restarted that process there. I think that's initially a small bug, a minor bug, but in this case, you just have to click dev mode off and hit compile again and compile. So let me add another character, AA, save, go back, dev mode off, compile, and it should update right away. Oh, there we go. So AA is added. So that's simply how you can debug a project using Super Development Mode and the bookmarklets, which are these buttons up here that we copied in. So I copied these buttons. So let me just review real quick just the overall process to give you an idea what's going on. So here's my project. I right-clicked and I went Maven install for this project. Copied all the resources into the web hosting directory, which is my sandbox app, one snapshot. After that, I went and started the web server, a simple web server, and you can see it's outputting the request to the web server here. This is running on port 8080, this directory. I could use a Tomcat web server. I could use any custom server I wanted to here. For this directory. And I don't necessarily have to host it in Target. I can host it in some other location, but I may have to write some scripts to copy my resources to that location and such. And maybe the web server, it's not running in debug mode. Well, you may need to reload the web server so it doesn't cache the resources. Keep in mind that you can't have a server that caches resources. It's got to update as soon as it pushes new files to it. In that case, or you just restart it since you're only debugging client-side mode anyways. So there are some caveats there. Okay, so I started that. Then I created a Super Dev Mode launcher by right-clicking, going Debug As. The first time it will create it. The second time it will ask you to rerun it. Or you can go up here and rerun it just like I just did. And you can see the output is coming down below. So I go Debug Configurations just to review. It's under GWT Development Mode, Code Server. And here's the launcher I just created. And there's GWT attributes. You can add more modules. Arguments. You can add a launcher directory and point it to the resources directory. But if you don't have the ability to push the resources using the launcher directory attribute or property, you'll need to use bookmarklets. So basically bookmarklets, I'll cover that in a minute, a little more detail. Okay, so that started the process. And then once I went to the website, I went to the GWT Code Server web server link, which has the bookmarklets, and copy them to the bookmark toolbar. Once I did that, I can go to the web server. If I go back, it didn't have an index or welcome page, so it didn't automatically go to my index for the website. So I went there, and then I went dev mode on to initially start, hit the compile, but if it doesn't do that, I go dev mode off and then hit compile again, and it compiles. Then if the incremental compiles so fast, you may not see the information go across. So if you go back to here, these are the triggers that triggers the Super Dev Mode. Basically, it sends a request back to the code server saying, okay, go ahead and compile, and the bits are compiled and injected into the document that you're hosting. So that concludes this video on simply using the bookmarklets right here to debug your GWT application, or in this case I have a GXT application which is built on GWT, and it allows me to debug it. So thanks for watching today. Follow me for more tips and tricks, and I'll catch you later.